Keep on keeping on. Oh hey, I didn't see you there. Oh, this? Pretty cool, huh? Do you want to be cool too? If so, and who doesn't, go to jumpscreative.com, click on the shop tab, and you can choose from an assortment of cool items. How about a cool t-shirt? A cool mug? How about some cool pillows? We've got all the merch to soothe your appetite for cool. And once you've picked something out for your cool self, how about picking out something for a friend? Who doesn't want cool friends? And even cooler, checking out new episodes of the Comic Sans podcast on Sundays. That sounds pretty cool. See you there. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Comic Sans podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Jumps, and today we're going to talk about the premiere issue of one of my favorites, Venom. And so I'll remind you that there was a previous episode of the podcast that goes over the previous run of Venom, as well as brings you up to speed a little bit on who Venom is, his powers, his origins, and all that. So if you didn't check that out, suggest checking that one out. Get the need to know info so that you'll be brought up to speed for this new run of Venom that just premiered. This issue was a really great start to a new series, and being that it is a premiere issue, it is a little bit longer than normal comic book issues are. That way it can, lay the foundation for the series to come, and it got off to a great start. So let's get into it. So to start, the first scene is really short and it is chaotic. It does start off with images of a motel on fire. There's soldiers advancing on that motel, and then it cuts to a splash page of Venom. And what I mean by splash page is just it's a full page that is just one image, and that image is Venom in all his glory. And one thing that I do want to note is that just a kind of a fun fact, the new author of the Venom series is Al Ewing, or Ewing, however you pronounce his name, I'm not sure. And he was actually previously attached to the Immortal Hulk series, which I really loved and was actually nominated for some awards. And now he's working on this Venom series, while Donny Cates, the writer of the previous Venom series, is working on the new series of Hulk, which I'll be covering in future episodes as soon as it actually comes out later this month. So that was just a fun fact there. Getting back into it, it's Venom. He's at this, motel. It's been set ablaze. It's assumed that he's being pursued by these soldiers that we see advancing on the motel. And just a reminder, Venom, at this point, if you'll remember from the previous Venom episode, the first episode of the podcast actually, is not Eddie Brock anymore. Eddie Brock is now the king or the god of the symbiotes, and his son Dylan Brock is actually the new Venom. The Venom symbiote is the only symbiote that's not part of the symbiote hive that Eddie is a god of. It's been somehow separated from that hive, and so Dylan is seen currently in possession of the Venom symbiote in this issue. And so that's about it for the first scene. It's just a really, really quick, and then now we're in space, and it's 12 hours earlier. We see 4 symbiote globs moving toward a spaceship, sending out a distress signal. The symbiotes then take on human-like shape. Eddie inserts his consciousness into one and takes charge, which is, now that Eddie is the god of the symbiotes, he can control all of the symbiotes and insert his consciousness into each individual one with just, a moment, just by thinking about it. And so all at this point seems fine, except that one of the symbiote's eyes flash red, which is odd. The rest of them, look normal. They've got the signature, Venom-like eyes. And they all make their way into the ship and split up to search for crew members of this spaceship. One of the symbiotes then comes across Skrull space pirates. And if you've seen the Captain Marvel movie, Skrulls are the shape-shifting aliens that got kind of like the weird chins that kind of look like Thanos' chin. They come across a group of those space pirates. It's assumed that these Skrulls were actually displaced from their destroyed home in the events of the King in Black limited series, which had to do with, you know, the old god of the symbiotes tearing across the universe in order to get to Earth and pretty much just destroy everything in its wake. So these Skrulls have an issue with symbiotes, seeing as how their home was destroyed by them. You know, who can blame them? Eddie then shifts into that symbiote and takes them out. Just as quickly as we switch from the first scene to this one, we're back on Earth, and Dylan is in the principal's office after getting in a fight. Now, keep in mind, this is still that part of that timeline of 12 hours ago, so we're not back up to the first scene yet. The first scene hasn't happened at this point. Eddie being gone all the time is starting to take its toll on Dylan. Dylan actually was raised by Eddie's abusive father. Eddie didn't even know about Dylan. It was his child with his deceased ex-wife, Anne Weying. And so they just as soon as they, you know, were brought together, it seemed like all of the events just, you know, took them right back apart. And Dylan's starting to feel abandoned, you could say. Dylan leaves school and is met by Sleeper outside. Sleeper is actually, just like how Carnage is the symbiote offspring of Venom, Sleeper is also the youngest offspring of Venom, and is not evil, and actually has decided to take on the form of a cat, to be a little less assuming, even though, you know, this is a cat with 4 eyes and green and black fur. But hey, it's the Marvel Universe. What are you gonna do? And at this point, the original Venom symbiote is actually MIA. Dylan hasn't heard from him, and you know, that's about all they say on the matter. Now we're back on the ship in outer space, and it's after the Skrulls are, you know, nice and whooped. One of the other symbiotes calls out to Eddie for help. Eddie shifts, only to find that the creepy red-eyed symbiote from before has slaughtered the crew that was hiding in the escape shuttle. Eddie then realizes that for some reason he can't control this symbiote. It tells Eddie not to get comfortable on his throne. It will soon be empty. It says that this is a message from the future, not a threat or a warning, just a fact. In somewhat of a cryptic way. And honestly, this scene, even just reading it and the image of it, it just kind of gave me chills a little bit. Like if I was in the shoes of Eddie, like I would have been terrified. After delivering this fact, this statement of fact, as it says, disintegrates, it was kind of an odd image to see of a symbiote disintegrating in this way, because normally, you know, they're fluid. You don't see them disintegrate in that way. So it's almost like it killed itself in a way. Eddie then leaves, pretty much just wondering what he should do. Now we're back on Earth again. It's 2 a.m. and Dylan is asleep when Eddie bursts in and tells him that he needs to pack. Dylan, if you can imagine, kind of takes issue with this, kind of grumbling to himself about, oh, he's been gone all this time, and then he just shows up in the middle of the night and tells me we need to leave without so much as an explanation. And then while he's packing, with Eddie waiting downstairs, he gets a call from Eddie, which is strange. Eddie tells Dylan not to go with the other Eddie and to sneak out and meet him at a motel. A motel. I feel like we saw something having to do with a motel earlier. The other Eddie goes upstairs, but Dylan is long gone. Now we see Eddie, the real Eddie, waiting in the room. He wants to experiment to see if he can shift into the mind of a symbiote in the future, because remember that message he was given was a message from the future. And so now it makes him wonder if, since he can shift into any symbiote across space, maybe he can also do that through time, seeing as how he is the god of the symbiotes. When he does try, he kind of drifts through time, it seems like. He gets flashes of soldiers coming for Dylan. A giant red and possibly symbiote creature named Bedlam. And Kang the Conqueror referring to himself as Eddie's oldest friend, saying, "You can't win." Now, we don't know what he's talking about. One thing that's interesting about Kang the Conqueror saying that he's Eddie's oldest friend is that Kang is usually a bad guy, for the most part. I mean, when it serves his own self-interest, he's been known to be on the side of the heroes, but for the most part, he's a bad guy, and he's actually someone that we're going to start seeing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We got our first interaction with a version of Kang in the Loki series. Is actually He Who Remains. And so it's just interesting to hear him considering himself to be Eddie's oldest friend, and it makes you wonder where this is gonna go. Bedlam, that guy looks like, nobody that you'd want to mess with. He looks like a giant, like almost dinosaur symbiote, and so I'm interested to see when he shows up, and I hope we don't have to wait too long on that. Also, we get a glimpse of what looks like Venom's hand with flaming fingertips, and I mean, that could mean anything. It's got to have some significance if it's being shown in this collage, if you will, of things that are coming in the future. Eddie wakes up on the floor of the hotel room and immediately calls Dylan to tell him not to come, but it's too late. He's already there. He's showing up on a bus when the soldiers show up and shoot missiles at the motel. Eddie gets caught in the explosion, and this is when the original Venom symbiote shows up and tackles Dylan out of harm's way, bonding with him in the process. And I do want to mention that I actually didn't notice this on my first read-through of the issue, but there were silhouettes of the original Venom symbiote kind of disguised, walking around as, a human with a baseball cap on and stuff. And there were, I believe, at least 2 glimpses of that silhouette that I just didn't even pay much attention to when I was reading through the first time. But then once I read through another time, I was like, oh, Venom's been watching Dylan, watching over him. Like I said, we're at the events of the first scene. Venom and Dylan have just bonded together to become, Venom. And Venom goes to town. I mean, he just saw his father get blown up in an explosion, and he's crashing helicopters, beating up soldiers. That's actually, curtains on Venom for this first issue. And meanwhile, it seems that Eddie actually avoided the explosion by drifting through time again. And I hadn't mentioned this earlier, but I just wanted to point out that I think Eddie's new look when he's, taking over the consciousness of a symbiote is really cool. It's like an updated version of the Venom look, and I just wanted to point out that it's pretty awesome. So the artist's doing well on that front. So once he's drifted through time again, he ends up in a place at the end of everything, where he meets Meridius. At this point, it says to be continued. I've never seen Meridius before. I believe this is his first appearance in the comics ever, as well as Bedlam. Bedlam's a completely new character as well that I've never seen before. And so Meridius, he looks pretty menacing, but from what we see on this page, it looks like, he's welcoming Eddie to his garden, I believe he said. He is, all black, making you think, is he maybe tied to the symbiotes? And being is how this is a place at the end of everything, could that message from the future be from Meridius? Who knows? Like I said, it is to be continued, but then we flip a couple pages and it's kind of like an after credits scene like we've seen in the X-Men comics pretty recently. And the final scene shows Meridius at a place called the Absent Throne. Again, kind of ties into don't get too comfortable on your throne, it'll be empty soon. And Meridius is being given the remains of Eddie Brock. Meridius says, "So it begins as it always does, Doctor. All that is happening now has happened before." So that's the end. That I promise this time, that's the end of the issue. Pretty crazy stuff. I'm excited to see, how Dylan bonded with the symbiote to become the new Venom, and where this, story takes them, as well as what's up with this Meridius guy. What's he all about? Is he a friend or a foe? Is he the one who sent a message back to Eddie? Why does he have Eddie's bones? Plenty of questions, so I can't wait for the second issue. Let me know what you guys thought of the issue. Make sure to like the video, of course, if you liked it, and I hope you did. Also, subscribe to the channel and share the video because that's all I got. Like I said, there's also going to be a Hulk series coming up soon that is promising. I can't wait to read it and share it with you guys. In MCU news, or Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you haven't caught on by now, the next upcoming installment is actually going to be a Disney Plus series, Hawkeye, starring Jeremy Renner, who played Hawkeye in the Avengers movies, and as well it's going to introduce Kate Bishop, who is the female Hawkeye in the comics, and she'll be played by Haley Steinfeld, and I've just got to say, that's the best casting that I could have thought of, honestly. So I'm really excited to see how this story goes. It's supposed to be kind of a passing of the torch kind of story, so we'll see if it plays out that way. I don't think that I have mentioned that I did actually see Eternals recently. Before watching it, I did see that there were some bad reviews. Don't listen to the reviews. Honestly, I'm not listening to the critics on Rotten Tomato anymore. They're the ones who said that, Dave Chappelle's The Closer was bad and the Fauci documentary on Disney Plus was amazing. And both of those ratings were opposite of what the audience thought. So the audience gave this an 80% score on Rotten Tomatoes. I agree with it. It was visually great. The characters were really good. I'd say most of the acting was really good. I will say this, I wasn't a big fan of Salma Hayek in the movie. I just didn't really enjoy her performance that well. That's really the main critique I have of it. Not that it was terrible, I'm just saying, if I had to pick out anything, I just wasn't much of a fan of her role in the movie. But I think that, anyone who loves the Marvel movies is going to love this Marvel movie just the same. Go check it out in the theaters. If you've already seen it, comment, let me know what you thought of the movie. Am I crazy, or is Rotten Tomatoes crazy? That's all I've got for you. You can always follow Instagram. It's at Comic Sandbox. And I know you've been seeing my merch recently, so you can always go to jumpscreative.com, click on the shop tab, and pick yourself out some merch from the online shop. Helps out the podcast, makes it to where maybe we can build it up a little bit more. Yeah, that is seriously all I've got. Hope you enjoyed, and keep on keeping on.